Good day, my beautiful people, and welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I'm your host, Dr. Coach Daniel Pueblos, and I have here with me former NCAA All-American baseball player from UC San Diego, who has a current master's and doctorate in sport and performance psychology. Did some work with the U.S. Army as a master resilience trainer and performance expert, right? You also do some work in sport performance teaching, okay, which we both love to do. And currently certified mental performance consultant with the San Francisco Giants baseball organization. My friend of the show, Dr. Kellen Lee. How you doing today, Kellen?
Oh, thanks. Doing really well. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to jump in here, have a conversation, and see where it takes us. But I appreciate the introduction, and it's always humbling to hear all the stuff I've done. Sometimes I forget. But yeah, I'm looking forward to today's chat and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, man. I wanted to bring you on because you were someone in the field of mental performance that has definitely made a presence, if you will. And not only the stuff that you've done with the Giants, but just kind of being a great representative of the field, right? I mean, shit, you were on a trading card, right? I mean, come on. I mean, what else do you want, right?
That honestly, how that all came to pass was, I spent a lot of time with our affiliate in San Jose since I lived in San Jose, and I was honestly poking fun with their front office. Go like, hey, like, get the mental skills guy get a card, and they're like, you want one? I was like, well, sure, if you're gonna give me one, sure. Like, I was kind of halfway joking, and sure enough, the photographer came up and was like, hey, like, let's snap some pictures, see if we can get one for a card. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, they're like, here's your card. And I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome. Thanks, guys.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, when you make it on a trading card, that's when you made it. Like,
I guess so.
So yeah, man. I know we've had a relationship and just following each other and seeing each other, doing different things. And I just want to say I appreciate you and what you've done in the field and being, again, a great representative for what we do, and a testament to how much the field has grown. And that's why I wanted to bring you on here today and talk about that. And first, kind of getting started as far as talking about like what following your baseball career. At what point did you know that you wanted to get into mental skills and work in this field, eventually get your education in as well?
Yeah, I think I definitely have to rewind back to my playing days at UC San Diego. As an athlete myself, I reached a level of performance that I never thought was even possible for myself. And I attribute a lot of that to our head coach, Dan O'Brien, really did a good job of introducing us to all of the mental game components and the concepts, and really got us thinking about how we can optimize our performance by just simply, taking care of all of the, like I said, the mental aspects of the game. So I had a lot of success as a college player, and it really just sparked my interest, and I was really intrigued. And I'm like, maybe there's something here to this, mental game. And, I started asking around and realized that sport and performance psychology was an entire field. And I was like, wow, like maybe that's where I want to go. So after I finished up at UCSD as an undergrad, I did my homework and basically immediately enrolled in a master's program in sports psychology at JFK University, and fell in love with it. I definitely had that spark of that initial interest as an athlete. And at the time I was like, do I want to go into coaching? Do I want to do the mental skills thing, full time? And I realized that I didn't want to go into coaching, which is also a really good realization. That just really wasn't for me. And I really wanted just to get after the mental performance side of things. And, I absolutely love it. So like I said, it really sparked from my experience with the concepts, being, formally and informally trained as an athlete, and then really seeing the benefit for myself. And then I'm like, well, shoot, like I want to help as many people as I can with the benefits that I saw as well. So that's really where it stemmed from. And I definitely feel like I took the right path in my career.
Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, and there is I mean, good, I'll say the vast majority of us who work in this industry have at one point or another been an athlete, right? And you kind of have this kind of appreciation, whether you're an athlete and or coach, which I have been, seeing it from the different perspectives and seeing like the importance of the mental game, and even like talking to older heads, like my dad, who, he grew up playing out, as an athlete. He was on this basically like he played over at Banning High School, which at that when he was playing in the 70s, they were like the modern days and these big time, IMG academies of the country as far as that team. So, at first he's like, what the hell is sports psychology? What is that? Right. And then the more I would talk to him about it, and the more he would, listen to my shows or whatever, talks I'm giving, he started thinking about it. It's like, yeah, he's like, man, that makes sense. Like if you would have told me before, I would have been like, oh, you're crazy. Like, cause no one talked about that stuff before, right? It's like, you have to be strong. You can't talk about your feelings. You can't talk about this or that, right? But they'll say, get your head in the game, right? Okay, what does that mean? So,
Right.
I think just, we have come a long way, and obviously, work is still to be done, as far as like the development of this field. And so, like, what have you seen, like, as far as the growth and your experience in this field, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think there's definitely that experience. I share that same experience with people who have been around sports, a lot longer than I have, or even longer than I've been alive.
Yeah,
That talking about the mental aspects of the game is still relatively new.
yeah,
Our field is compared to other fields, other branches of psychology, or just really other fields of study in general. The field of sport and performance psychology is still in its infancy. 30 to 40
mhm,
years old is not really that old in
yeah,
the long scheme of things. So what I've seen is um, most people talk about the mental game, but they may not know that it's actually sports psychology concept. So I found that, again, especially in baseball, I can speak to baseball, more exclusively, but even coaches who have been around the game for years and years and years tend to acknowledge that what you think is going to impact how well you play. And that basic principle is where I try to operate from, especially with someone who isn't necessarily as familiar with the field, or what mental skills coaching really is. I just try to operate that, we can all agree from a human standpoint that what we think about while we're doing something, whether it's athletically related or not, is going to impact the quality of what we're doing. So, what we're thinking about, what we're focusing on, what types of thoughts we're having, whether they're helpful or harmful or productive or counterproductive in the moment, we can all agree that what we think is going to influence the quality of what we're doing. So, starting at that really basic principle allows people to really open up their eyes and go like, wow, like you said with your dad, like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like maybe I should start thinking about what I'm thinking, and
yeah,
really tune myself into that stuff. So um, there's no doubt that I think more and more people are becoming aware of what this work is. But I would say one of the biggest challenges that I've noticed in the field in general is just most people don't know what the work is, what mental
yeah,
performance is, what mental performance or mental skills training really is all about. And I think a huge part of our field, at least from my perspective, is just simply educating on people and what it is.
yeah,
And like you said, I try to be outspoken and try to educate as many people as I can, whether through social media or interactions or coaches or athletes. I just think that the more people can truly understand what the work is, the more there's going to be intrigue and interest and curiosity, and honestly more work opportunities for myself and really for everybody in the field. And that's really what I'm shooting for, is for as many coaches and athletes to fully understand and wrap their head around what the work is, because I just seen it. The benefit there is incredible for the entire field. So
yeah,
yeah, I just think like sometimes the apprehension or the uncertainty of what we do is simply because of a lack of understanding. So if
yeah.
we can attack the understanding and help people really grasp what we're doing, I think it just benefits really everybody in that regard, if people truly understand what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, and that's something that I've been challenged with as well. I would say like throughout my career in the field, and it's great to hear your perspective and kind of feeling like okay, I'm not the only one, right? Which I know
No,
that.
totally.
As far as like getting, especially when I know I've experienced this, especially like at the more elite levels. Um, but you still get this like even when I've talked to like youth high school coaches in the past, you have people who are just like they take it's almost like the approach of if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? Or
Mhm.
and it's kind of like sometimes I would hear it kind of associated with the stigma of mental health, right? How people might say, oh, I'm not crazy, or I don't have anything wrong with me, right? So it's just again it's just a lack of understanding, like you said, right? And yeah, it's pretty awesome too. Like when at least when I've explained what it is that we do, and they start to and that makes sense, and okay, and they're like, okay, yeah, let's do it, right? I mean, of course, I've had athletes in the past or coaches or both, kind of say, I'm good, and so sometimes I've had to, especially when I was doing my own consulting, kind of put my salesperson hat on and explain to them, right? It's like you're kind of selling a service, which it's not like you're selling some used car and it's a beater, right? You're selling some stuff that it's like I tell them, because a lot of coaches think, especially like, if we know the game of baseball, some coaches might think that, we're trying to step on their toes and trying to, do that. And I tell them, no, like my job is to enhance what you're doing. Is to take what you're doing, and incorporate a different aspect, right? It's kind of like, bringing in a registered dietitian, helping you better understand nutrition, how that can help your performance, right? This is just the mental part of performance, which will only help, all the fundamental stuff that you guys are working on here, right? So it's just, I think, I think it is that lack of education and understanding about it, which I feel is getting better, right? I mean, you look at how more and more teams. I mean, look at you're in the San Francisco Giants organization, um, as a full time member, whereas before, they would bring, you know, people in. They would bring us in as like a part time consultant, or doing like a workshop for the team, right? And now you're seeing more and more teams, universities, colleges. Like I was coaching the college women's basketball team over here. I was a mental coach for them. So like you're seeing more and more of that, and you're hearing about it, which is a testament to the growth of the field.
Yeah.
And even like the CNPC, this certification through ASP, like, and I tell people, like, listen, like, you just, if you don't believe me how the field is growing, go on like those job boards and seeing these positions, whereas like before the desired qualifications would be having that CNPC. You're starting to see more of those job postings having that CNPC as a requirement, to even be considered, right? And so that's the bar is being raised there. So all these signs are just just a testament to how this field is growing, and the demand and as well as the expectations are going up there too.
Yeah, I think like you said, and we're discussing now, is like the more people understand it, the more they're gonna want what we bring to the table as a field and as a whole. So yeah, I think we just constantly have the conversation with coaches and players and administrators and decision makers of what the CMPC means and what that entails, and really identifying that CMPC as really the marker of competence in the field. I think is going to add to its credibility. And like you said, you're going to see more of those job postings really urging and encouraging and almost requiring that CMPC. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one thing that you said that really sparked a thought in me is, the coaches or the athletes are like, oh, I'm good. Like there's nothing wrong with me. Like I'm good as I am. And whenever I have hear that flavor of discussion, I go down the road. It's like, okay, well, do you ever have coaches help you identify what's working for you so you can do it again in the future? Well, yeah. Like if my swing's really good, like I want to know exactly what I'm doing to make sure that I can repeat it. I'm like, the mental game is no different. So if there's nothing wrong with you, that's great. It's awesome. I'm so fired up for you. But let's actually take the time to identify what mental strategies or techniques are you currently implementing to help you sustain that level of success moving forward. So again, a common misconception is that I'm here just to fix people, but sometimes
Mhm.
I'm here just to help them sustain what they're already doing. If it's super effective, I don't want to change anything. Shoot, like
Yeah.
keep doing what you're doing. I'm
Yeah.
just here to help you bring it to your attention so that you can use whatever strategies you're using to be successful on purpose, so that you can just continue being consistent. So, because the name of the game is being consistent. And, you know, again, if you're doing something well already, that's awesome. It's incredible. So let's just find ways to continue doing that. And mental training it is a way to help you sustain that success. So just wanted to throw it out there, because sometimes we only talk about, helping someone get better, or, fixing a concern, or if someone's distracted or nervous. Of course, that's what we do. But if someone is truly squared away and focused on the right thing at the right time, and locked in on their process, and really in control of their mind and body while they're competing, that's incredible. We can also support them by going like, dude, like something's working for you. Let's just figure out what it is so you can do it again. I can't tell you how many conversations I have of that type of flavor versus like, all right, well, you're really struggling right now. Like, of course, like we can't help with that, but like we also do help sustain success too.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm glad, and that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, because yeah, that's I've heard that plenty of times too. Where like, nothing's wrong with me, so I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll call you when I start dealing with something, right? And then yeah, I had I have a similar response to kind of how you mentioned, right? So I'm glad you brought it up, because yeah, that's a very good point of how we don't just help people with you know issues or challenges that they're facing. Yeah, we do that, right? And of course, like there are going to be challenges down the line as well. But that's why I tell like my athletes is like, now that everything's squared away and awesome, right? Like you said, but now let's take the approach to just take what you're doing well, right, and enhance that, and take a proactive approach, and like before stuff has hit the fan, and prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for any other situation that might come your way, and among
Yeah.
other things that we could work on. So by the time, if and when it does happen, like we've been there, we worked on that, right?
Totally.
Um, and I think like you having that, have the advantage, and this is, I've experienced working with a basketball team. I think it's so awesome to be able to like be at one spot as compared to like, working with individual clients, which is great, right? But like when you're able to be with a team or organization on a consistent basis, you start to get to know the players, right? You
Yeah.
start to get to know the coaches and the culture, right? Which I mean, I think it's such it brings more of a value to what we do, and be able to have a better understanding about how
Mhm.
these athletes tick and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, totally.
So like, and I know we talked about before of how, especially in the sport of baseball, you have a lot of Spanish speakers, right?
Mhm.
So like, talk to me about that and your journey with like speaking Spanish. I know we've had a discussion in the past, but like, because are you a native Spanish speaker?
I am not a native Spanish speaker,
Okay.
but for the listeners that may not be as familiar with like the dynamic of minor league baseball and professional baseball in general, there are probably between 40 to 50% of minor league players who have very limited English speaking capabilities, where they're born in the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or Colombia or Venezuela, or really any Spanish speaking country,
Sure.
and they sign as a professional player at age 16 or 17. Who knows what their education level or formal like school education level is at that point. But once they sign a professional contract, they essentially, just dedicate everything to, making and staying in the major leagues. So
Yeah.
as they progress through the minor leagues, they're looking to get better. They're looking to learn. They're looking to refine their craft, both mentally and physically. And for me, a personal belief of mine is that I can't effectively do my job to its fullest if I can't reach and communicate with every single player. So I've made it a very deliberate effort to improve my Spanish speaking ability over the last couple of years. I've gotten to the point where I can do my job in Spanish. I can do presentations on the mental game in Spanish. I can have conversations one-on-one with guys only in Spanish. And I've served as a translator for coaches that don't speak Spanish to communicate messages to our Spanish speaking players. I've really made a deliberate effort because, like I said, it's really important for me to communicate as much as I can with as many players as possible. And again, a personal belief of mine is if the information is important enough to say in English to a group of players, it's important enough to get that same message to every single player as best as we can. And of course, like as a non-native Spanish speaker, my Spanish speaking capabilities is not nearly to the level of my English speaking capabilities. So sometimes the message that I translate to Spanish is much more simple or much more direct, or say it in a different way, but it's the same concept. It's really important for me to speak Spanish. So it's a continuous journey I'm on. I'm taking private Spanish lessons currently, regularly with a professor, and it's been really helpful. I get activities related to baseball content or non-baseball content in Spanish. She gives me stuff to read and watch and listen to, just to really just sharpen up the vocabulary and enhance the usage. And again, on a day-to-day basis, when I'm around the players, I have ample opportunity to practice Spanish. Like I said, we could talk about baseball. We can talk about really anything off the wall, like baseball players tend to do in the dugout. And it's a really cool journey to be on to pick up a second language. But I'll tell you this, like as an adult, it's really hard to learn a second language. So I just have the utmost respect for the young Latin players that we have in the Giants organization, but really across professional baseball, really striving to learn English. It's incredibly hard and challenging. So I have the utmost respect for them, being thrown in the fire and missing on a lot of information because, the primary language in baseball is English here in the United States. And I'm sure that they don't pick up on all the information just by simply the inability to speak the language. So that's, again, I just have so much respect for them, because I'm going through it the same way, just on the flip side, learning Spanish. But yeah, it's really important to me. And again, I could talk about this for a long time, but I just think it's incredibly important to be able to reach all the players. And, even if my Spanish isn't perfect, I believe there's that reciprocal respect from their standpoint, like, hey, this guy's really trying to work hard and really communicate with me. But yeah, I lean on our bilingual coaches for support. My partner, the other mental skills coach with the Giants, Cisco Rodriguez, he is a native Spanish speaker from the Dominican Republic. So he is incredibly helpful. Whenever we have to translate content or, provide something in both English and Spanish for practice, I do it first, and then I'll send it to him, and he'll give me the feedback on what could be better, how we can, make it more clear, understandable for the players and coaches. And so it's really a team effort, but he's been incredibly supportive. And, since we got hired together on my Spanish speaking journey, but it's a fun ride to be on. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm close. I'm getting there to the point where I can comfortably really be thrown in any situation and be just fine to communicate.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I'm right there with you. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish, and I took 3 years of high school Spanish, and then come to find out that the majority of what I learned wasn't what they speak in the world. Because it's like casual Spanish versus like the Spanish from Spain, kind of more formal Spanish. So I'm like, all those 3 years, I mean, you learn a lot. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of different words that are like, oh, we don't say that, right? So so yeah, I mean, and that's what I tell people, especially those people who want to work in baseball, is like, yeah, you definitely want to sharpen up on your Spanish, because and obviously there are other players that come from other countries like Japan, Korea, and so forth, and Europe. But there's as you alluded to, there's a lot of players that come from those Latin countries. And you could just bring so much value if you're able to not only speak English, but communicate, because the communication is, I mean, it's hard enough communicating sometimes with some athletes, speaking English, right?
Yeah.
Let alone trying to speak a different language. So that's awesome that, you took that deliberate action to want to, to do that and just provide more value, on top of your knowledge of the mental game for the athlete. So I definitely appreciate that. So, talk to me about, I know, every professional team who has some sort of mental skills program might look a little different. But I know you kind of jump around the different ball clubs. So talk to me, like, what have you seen? What have you experienced, like comparing the different minor league teams to the major league Giants team?
Yeah, I think it's as an organization, it's really important, at least for our standpoint, to make sure everything is consistent as possible, so that when minor league players do end up on the big league roster eventually, um, they're used to the terminology, they're used to the coaching styles, they're used to some of the data and some of the numbers that we value as an organization. So essentially, I see myself as just another resource for players to help prepare them to be as successful at the major league level as humanly possible. So, when I'm having a conversation with a young minor league player, the focus is development first, and then with the intent of developing them into major league players. So we're always finding ways to emphasize and reinforce some of the philosophies and things and pillars that we value as an organization, all the way down to, the youngest, Latin player in the Dominican Republic academy at age 16. Like, we want the same principles being applied and being reinforced over and over. So from a mental skill standpoint, it's really important that we understand from the hitting side of things, we want to emphasize, A, B, and C. From the pitching side, we want to emphasize A, B, and C, so that we're speaking that language and reinforcing some of those goals that they have from like a departmental standpoint. I think some of the biggest differences, like in general, for just like looking at the minor leagues in general, I would say the biggest difference between some of the less experienced or younger minor league players versus some of the older, more experienced minor league players that are on the cusp of the major leagues is the ability to be self-sufficient, and that level of self-awareness that's really important to make adjustments and to understand what they need. Sometimes when a player first enters professional baseball, maybe they haven't experienced a ton of adversity. Maybe they've been given, what their practice plan is or what they need to do before games to prepare themselves. But once you get into professional baseball, it's much less structured. Players have a lot of autonomy to take ownership and power over what they do to prepare themselves for games. What do they watch? What type of video do they watch the opponent? Do they watch themselves? What type of drills they do before the game to prepare? So sometimes it's a lot of trial and error, because they're a young high school player or college player comes in, it's like, well, my coach has always done this for me, but it's now up to them, and the ball's really in their court to identify their process and sharpen it that way. So then, you fast forward to 3, 4, 5 years in the future with an older minor league player who, again, may have made it to the major leagues, or maybe in AAA, the higher level of the minor leagues. They tend to be, general, they tend to be more self-sufficient, more self-aware. They understand what they need. They understand what they don't need. They understand, the common distractions that get in their way. And I would say, like, to be successful and to be consistent, that level of self-awareness is incredibly important, to understand, again, like what you need to do to prepare yourself for a game. Again, the uniqueness of baseball is that you play every single day. Some sports you play twice a week. Baseball, you play 6 times a week. And that's just the nature of the beast. So having that consistent process and, understanding what you need or what you need to get rid of in your process is just as important, is incredibly, incredibly important. So I try to help players reach that level of self-awareness as fast as possible, so they can be self-sufficient, make adjustments on their own, and just be a really effective player for themselves, but for the organization as a whole. And really just constantly reinforce what we identify as important as an organization, so that they're in line with our philosophies, but also developing themselves within the framework of those philosophies.
Yeah, and that's a great take as far as giving us a little background about what that looks like and the differences, right? Because the talent and the fundamental skills, as you know, as a former player, that'll take you, so far. I think once you get to that elite level, at that professional level, where like that talent gap is like goes from here, maybe back in high school or wherever they were, to like here, right? It's it's trying to figure out what's that difference of like what brings those minor leaguers, like when you compare and contrast the justification between those minor leagues versus those who make it to the show, right, to the major leagues. A lot of times it's this stuff up here, right? It just being able to persevere, because I mean, having worked with a lot of minor league baseball players in the past, and actually one of them you probably know, Ryan Murphy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he told me I'm going to try to bring him on here as well as one of my guests. So working on that, but like a lot of people don't realize the unique challenges that these players go through, and not only like in the game, but just like financially of having to to sustain and just along their journey to trying to make it to the majors, right? So like have you talked to them, like what are some challenges that you've heard that maybe the majority of the of people don't really realize that's going on at the minor league level?
Yeah, I think the one you just hit on financially, I think is a common challenge that most people may not understand.
Yeah.
The majority of minor league players are making very little money during the season, and somewhere in the $20,000 range for the year is their yearly salary. So people think like, oh, they're professional players. Like, yes, they are, but you don't make the big bucks until you get to the major leagues. So that, I think that's a common challenge. People, with that said, minor league players, as it sits right now, are only paid during the season. So the 6 or 7 months of the season, that's when they make their money. So in the off season, most have to get other jobs. They have to, find a place to live in the off season so they can train. So whether that's, some players go home and live with their parents. Sometimes they'll go and move out next to our spring training complex, for us in Arizona, or some teams in Florida, where they have access to facilities and they can get their training in. But again, that costs rent, and sometimes they have to get a job, and sometimes those guys who have to get a job don't have the time to dedicate to all their training. So there's that double-edged sword there, where they need to move somewhere so they can train, but they have to afford it.
Yeah.
And if they have to work, that takes away the time for them to train. So they have to weigh the options there. So yeah, I think that's a really tough challenge guys have to face in the off season. But yeah, like just like the housing situation can be challenging too. Going from team to team, going from place to place, getting traded is a huge stress as well.
Yeah.
Going from one organization to another, completely uprooting everything you've established, your friends, your support system, your coaches that you trust, and being able to getting traded to another organization is a big stressor that, I think I was guilty of this too before I really understood the ins and outs of it. But, you think of, you see a trade and it's really exciting. You're like, oh, my team just got this guy. But then you realize that there's 3 other people in this deal that no one really took the time to think about, or they have to make a huge change, or, they have to go to a new team or a new city, or, a new place. And it's just, there's a huge stress there too. So, like there's just a lot of nuances when it comes to the journey of a minor league player and a professional player in general, that, we as mental skills coaches can support. But yeah, it's a crazy journey. It's a really exciting journey. These guys, again, they tell me all the time they wouldn't trade it for anything else. They know how fortunate they are. But yeah, there are quite a few challenges that they have to face on a daily basis, on top of performing, because if they know if they don't perform well, this might sound harsh, but they'll lose their job. And that's the reality of professional sports.
That's the reality.
That's just the reality. So on top of all the off-field stressors, they have the on-field stress of just being a productive player for their own career, which is ultimately what they're there to do, is to make it to the major leagues and live out that dream. So just managing all the things that thrown their way is incredibly challenging, but they're it's fun. It's fun to navigate those moments and obstacles with them and provide any support I can to help them, just navigate it as best as they can.
Yeah, and you brought up like the challenge of having to relocate, and you see this across sports at every level, with players and coaches, right? Where, yeah, the common sports fan will see those trades, or they'll see, a coach getting fired and then rehired at a different team, and oh, that's cool, or oh no, this and that. Obviously they have different opinions, but most people don't realize what's going on behind the scenes, right? Especially if you have, I mean, it's tough. It's tough enough as the player to have to pick up and just relocate, sometimes on the opposite end of the country. It brings a whole other challenge if you have like a family, for instance, if you have kids in school, all these different things that, as a father, I'm sure you can appreciate. It's just like, even like with us, as mental skills coaches, it's, sometimes people, and this is what I tell people who want to, break into the industry, is like, yeah, I mean, if you want to stay where you are, understand that your options are limited, right, as far as career opportunities, but especially in the field of sports, right? If you open yourself up, if you're able to, because everyone's situation is different, obviously.
Yep. Yep.
But if it is something you want to, if you're open to moving, obviously the opportunities would be great. But it's such a challenge, having to pick up. And obviously, the average sports fan might not realize that challenge and think, oh, they got, they were traded from the Giants to the Mets, all right, or vice versa, and think, oh, no big deal. Well, yeah, you're going from, San Francisco, you're going from California to New York, and you have to figure out housing, you have to figure out all these things that most people don't realize is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, and those small nuances are again, that it's what these players have signed up for, and they're willing to face it because they want to reach that level to the major league. So yeah, it's I'm constantly learning about what it will, like the day in the life, so to speak, of a minor league player. Just hearing our guys talk and hearing some of the things they're concerned about or think about or talk about, which is all super relevant and helpful information for me, just to be able to speak their language, understand where they're going through, and empathize as best as I can. But yeah, I'm constantly learning about, the things that's top of mind for them, and, perhaps taking them out of their game. So I'm just there to support them in any way I can. And sometimes I don't have the right answer. I don't have the perfect answer, but, sometimes just showing some support and, having the conversation, just learning about where they're coming from, gives me something to think about. And perhaps I follow up with them later, or give them some ideas that come to mind. But yeah, I'm always hearing things that they're thinking about, that absolutely could play a factor in their on-field performance.
Absolutely. So, like, talking about the things that take them off their game, talk to us about the common challenges that you've seen specific to baseball, as far as like the mental game. What are some things that you see, across the board during your experience?
Yeah, I think I don't think this is necessarily just related to baseball, of course, but I'd say a really common one in baseball is just preoccupying their own minds with things that they can't do anything about. What they can't control is what we're talking about here, where they're thinking about who's in the stands. Is it a front office person making a decision about a roster? Is it a scout from another team who is watching them for a potential future trade? Like, there's just so many things. Or what the manager's choice in terms of who's going to play more or less in a series, pitching decisions, promotions, or any like roster movement within the organization, stuff like that. It's always top of mind because those things are important. Like the opinion of the front office is important. Like, I'm not going to deny that. It can become a distraction when you're thinking about it on the field while you're performing. So, thinking about all those things that are outside their control is a really common theme that I notice, and just helping them get back to focus on what they need to do in that moment. versus thinking about the consequences or the future ramifications or of whatever is happening. That tends to be really common. I would say that there's another common like statement I hear is like, oh, the game is speeding up on me, like quote unquote. I hear that all the time. The game's speeding up on me, or the game's moving too fast. And that's almost like whenever I hear that, it's almost like a little light bulb pops on figuratively for me. And I'm like, oh, what that's actually saying to me is that they're just thinking a little bit too much in the moment, because the speed of the game, and I explained this to them, like the speed of the game actually doesn't change. Yeah. There's, in fact, now with a pitch clock, it's very regimented in the actual time, the game is not speeding up. Yeah. The sensation or the experience of the game speeding up is simply your thoughts coming at a faster rate than normal. So helping them understand that that is simply what that experience is. I'm not devaluing their experience. I'm not devaluing what they're telling me. I'm just telling them to think about what they're telling me a little bit different, because the game itself is not speeding up. The guys aren't throwing harder. The time between pitches hasn't changed. In fact, like it's pretty consistent now. It's even more consistent than it's ever has been with the pitch clock. So what they're telling me is they're thinking the rate at which their thoughts are coming is just a lot faster. So then after that conversation, give them tools to be able to minimize and be in control of their thoughts and just be more, locked in on what they're doing, tends to be a common theme that I see. So yeah, like focusing on what's outside your control is common, but also just that sensation of the game speeding up on them tends to be really common too. And then, being able to tap into what that actually means and give them things and techniques that can allow that experience just to be experienced less often is a really common discussion that I have with guys.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I know you've been, working in the field for a while. But for those people who are listening and are thinking about, breaking into the field, can you first talk to us about like how did you break through? How did you get into the field? How did you get a place with the Giants? And then like if someone did want to, break into mental skills and work for a team, like what would you tell them?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and I think it's really important to talk about. So I'm glad you asked. So first of all, for graduate students or people early in their career or looking to break into the field and do some really awesome work, the first thing I would tell you is just work with a variety of different performers, whether that's coming from different sports or non-sport performers, to sharpen your craft as a whole. One of the pieces of advice that I was given as a graduate student that I didn't fully understand back then, but now do for sure. I was talking when part of my master's program, we had to do a lot of internships working with athletes and teams. And I made it very verbal and very vocal at that time that I'm like, I want to work in professional baseball. That's where I want to go. It's exactly, I'm living my dream career right now. So I want to make sure that's clear. Yeah. But at the time as a graduate student, I was very fixated on working in baseball. So when we were planning out my internships, deciding where I was going to, what teams and who I was going to work with, the person in charge of the internships looked at me and said, "Oh, you want to work in baseball in the future? Great. Don't work with baseball players during your internships." And I look at her and I'm like, that doesn't add up. Like that doesn't compute. Like, what are you talking about here? Like, that's where I want to go. Again, I was very narrow-minded. Yeah. I had my blinders on. That's where I wanted to go. I was very stubborn at the time. And she's like, just trust me. Like, if you want to work in baseball, don't work with baseball players now. And again, I didn't understand it. So again, I listened. I was coachable in the moment. And I was like, okay, fine. So I work with, lacrosse, and I work with soccer and different sports. And what I came to realize is that when you work with sports you're not necessarily familiar with, shoot, I knew nothing about boys lacrosse, zero, absolutely nothing before I started working with that team. But what it made me realize is I was able, and it forced me to look at my work from a very different lens. Because again, baseball is my comfort zone. I know the game inside and out. So being able to see different performers from that lens, just from a mental performance lens only, I think is an incredibly helpful skill set. So that's one thing I would share. It's just like, really look to give yourself a good variety of athletes and performers that you work with to really sharpen your craft. And with that said, like leads into where I think we really took a step in the right direction to get to where I'm at now. As you mentioned, I worked with the U.S. Army for 3 years. After doing a couple of years of consulting with different athletes, again to sharpen the craft, variety of performers, same theme there. But really, when I started working with the U.S. Army as a civilian contractor instructor, I knew nothing about the Army, zero, absolutely nothing. Just like I did with the lacrosse team and some of the other sports, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I going to do this? I don't get it. But again, what it forced me to do is put that lens on to see them for what they're doing, and try to provide value from the mental performance side of things. And I can't tell people enough how important, how impactful, how much I got better as a professional working in that environment, getting a ton of repetitions in front of groups, explaining concepts and teaching concepts to other people. Within the Army, I won't go into it too much, but within the Army, there's a lot of different like specific jobs that soldiers have. So being able to understand their job and understand what they do and the challenges and the performances that they're asked to engage in, the tasks that they have to do, and understanding what they do and being able to connect the dots between, the sport and performance psychology concept world to their tasks is an incredibly helpful skill to have. And I think absolutely, I know without a doubt, set me up for success when I made the transition back into sport with the Giants. Is now I see everything that our players do as a performance, and every performance that they do has a mental component that I can support, whether that's in the return to play process from an injury, whether that's in the weight room, whether that's during conditioning, whether that's during defense or offense or in the bullpen. No matter what I'm watching, I can identify a mental component to it. And with that said, I can help identify skills and strategies that can improve that mental component of whatever they're doing. And again, the reason why I'm able to do that, I know that, is I stepped outside my comfort zone and worked with a variety of different performers so that I can always wear that lens. Instead of just seeing it from the baseball lens, I can see it from the mental performance lens, no matter what I'm watching, no matter what I'm talking about, no matter what sport I'm working with or who I'm working with. I can see it through that lens now. And it almost forced me to adopt that perspective. So I think to answer your question, I think variety of performers, I can't tell you how much value or how valuable it was, the experience working with the Army. It's such an incredibly humbling population to work with. And also just, being able to learn from a great team at that program. I had an unbelievable team of professionals that I worked with on a regular basis where, I would give a presentation to a group of soldiers, and then at least one of my colleagues would be in the back taking vigorous notes, and we would debrief it and talk about, what part was really effective, if I explained anything really, really well, particularly well, if an activity went really well, or they would say, man, like you were explaining this and it was completely confusing. You lost me. I didn't understand it. And like that feedback is helpful as well. So I was able to grow and develop as a communicator, as a presenter in front of groups. And again, like getting a ton of repetitions of teaching these concepts was so helpful. And I know set me up for success when I first started with the Giants. So yeah, I think I recommend working with the military population to anyone who's looking to get into the field, because I just found so much value. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised at some point down the line in my career, I go back working with the military. I really enjoyed it. But for the time being, I love what I'm doing. And I know that, I'm just really grateful that I had that opportunity to work with that population.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And thank you for sharing all those golden nuggets. I know a lot of people will get so much value from. And yeah, I mean, I second everything you just said, just thinking back from my experience and working with, because I grew up playing baseball, football, basketball, right? And that's it. I played a little bit of hockey, but like roller hockey, nothing crazy. But and all of a sudden, I'm finding myself working with water polo, badminton, gymnastics. And I'm like, again, like you said, it takes you out of your comfort zone, which is a good thing. That's where the growth really starts, right? Because it's easy to work in like baseball or whatever sport you're comfortable with, but And that, then I'm finding myself, like you said, like working with other non-sport industries. I, work with entertainers and like visual artists, musicians, and just like, because at the end of the day, it comes down to performance psychology, right? And when you think about it, most things, are performance based. So it's just us, as the mental coaches, to make a couple of tweaks here and there, and specific to whatever population you're working with, to make it a good fit, because there's so much overlap when it comes to the mental game,
Totally.
I mean, and it doesn't matter what industry it is, right? So thank you so much for sharing that, man. So now, when you're not mental coach, when you're not Dr. Lee, what do you like to do for fun, other than hanging out with the little man Colton and having fun with him? Or I actually saw that you're on the MLB The Show, huh? The video game.
Yeah.
Man, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So, hey, talk about like the trading card, but man, the MLB The Show. Anyone who loves baseball, they know that game. So like, what do you like to do outside of all this mental coaching stuff? Which I know it's technically work, but you live in your dream, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the MLB The Show was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That whole experience. But yeah, when I'm when I'm not with our Giants affiliates, I, like you said, I love spending time with my family. Colton, my son's 5. Dawson, my daughter, is 1.5, and my wife Jacqueline. Just love spending time with them as much as I can. As you can imagine, I'm on the road a little bit, so whenever I'm home, I try to be home and go to Colton's little league games and just be dad. Like I just want to be dad and husband as much as I can. No surprise. We watch a lot of sports in our house. My wife is a collegiate athletic trainer, so she's in the sports world as well. So we'll go to her games. We'll go to her university games, whether it's her sport or not. We'll go to a lot of games there. I love staying active, getting exercise in. I got a little gym in my garage, during COVID, and it's been a huge addition to the house. In fact, Colton likes joining me in the gym sometimes. He'll walk on the treadmill as I'm lifting weights or whatever, and it's nice to be able to share like something for myself, like exercises for me. But if he can be there, like I'm not missing out on anything, and he's just there with me and he sees it, and it's a really cool experience too. But yeah, I don't play a lot of video games, but when I do, it is MLB The Show. Like you said, I am in the game, which is a really cool, unique collaboration that I was a part of. So if anyone that's listening that does play MLB The Show, if you go into MLB The Show 22, so this year's version, you go to the game mode Road to the Show. They implemented like a video podcast type of style with a bunch of coaches and analysts. And I happen to be one of the people on the show. So you'll actually see, very similar to what we're doing now, like a video podcast chat in the video game, which is pretty cool. It was a really unique, like I said, collaboration that I had a lot of fun with. I can say that I'm in a video game. It's pretty unique there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, trade card, video game, like man, what's next, man? What's next?
I don't know. I don't know, but again, yeah, I appreciate it. But yeah, in the game again, just like people, if you want to check it out, I just talk about the mental game. They asked me about questions about some of the challenge, like very similar to what we talked about here. And they captured some video and threw it in the game. So hopefully gamers, like we talked about, just educating people on the field. Hopefully that, those little blurbs that are in the video game can educate people or open people's eyes and go like, wow, I didn't know like mental performance training was a thing. Like hopefully that people have that realization. When we were thinking through and I was thinking about the possibilities, that was one thing that came to mind, just to spread the awareness of what the work is. And I was really honored to represent the field in that way on that platform. It was really cool.
Yeah. That's all. Now I have to go pick up the game, man. I think I have like the 2020, 2021 version of the show, but now I gotta go pick it up to see my guy here. So that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, just thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
It's definitely a pleasure just to talk to you and I know we had a couple of chats in the past, but just be able to see you grow and see you again, being an excellent representative of us, of the field, and and doing the great things that you're doing, and also being a great husband and dad. You know, it's great stuff, man. So keep that going. So a lot of people are watching that, and a lot of people are looking up to you.
I really appreciate that. I've enjoyed our chat, and I look forward to more chats in the future. And yeah, I appreciate the invitation to have the discussion, and I appreciate the kind words, and I'll continue forward. And as a group, I think as a field, I think we just continue forward, continue to educate and inspire, and just help people perform better at what they do. And that's the cool part of our job. We just help people be better and get better. It's awesome.
Good stuff, my brother. Good stuff. So, hey, if you want to follow Dr. Kellen Lee here, you can follow him on Instagram at Kellen_Lee25. He also has a Twitter account at Mentally Perform, and you could also connect with him on LinkedIn. Just search his name, Kellen Lee, PhD, CMPC, and you'll find him there, sure enough. So again, thank you to our special guest, Dr. Kellen Lee. Thank you all of you who are watching today. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. Take care of yourselves and each other. Be easy.
Take it easy.
Next one.
Take it easy, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right. We'll see you guys.